Hello, this is the third video of my series on the Dead Sea Scrolls. Today we will be going over the text, a commentary on Habakkuk. At the start, the commentary makes a short quote and then gives the interpretation. It is important to note that early commentaries did not always deal in simple interpretations. Rather, they often gave more complex interpretations of the scriptures, as the scroll's audience would have consisted of mostly, if not entirely, doctrinally literate individuals in a biblically literate society. Let's begin. The scroll states, "The oracle that the prophet Habakkuk saw. How long have I cried out, and you do not hear? I cry out in justice, and you do not liberate us." This is a quote of the first two verses of the book of Habakkuk. The commentary is fragmentary, and most of the interpretation is left out. However, the partly inferred phrase, "the events to come upon them," sets up the rest of the commentary. Now would be a good time to note that the commentator rails against the invading Romans in his commentary, making this work more political than religious in focus, although it has strong spiritual statements. The next part of the text starts denouncing those who break the law of God. It begins to modify the textual rebukes of Habakkuk's contemporaries to apply them to the unfaithful of the author's time. The supermajority of column 1 of this text is a discourse on the subject of lawlessness, defined by the law of God. In the 13th line, denoted by a superscript of 13, there are two characters noted that wise Habakkuk and Cook think may be foundational figures in the literature of the Dead Sea Scroll community. One interesting reference in the scroll is to a new covenant. It seems probable that this scroll is not referring to the new covenant instituted by Jesus Christ, but rather it is possible that Judaism of the first century had a similar perception of the scriptures to that of Jesus Christ. They thought that they were the inheritors of the new covenant that God would make with the house of Judah and Israel, two separate groups. A covenant, a new covenant. It is easy to see how the group that wrote these texts would adopt the idea of a new covenant to fit their worldview. So sadly, the entirety of column 2 seems to be talking about the beliefs of the Judaistic authors rather than an early Judeo-Christian group. This is bolstered by various claims that the text was written before the birth of Christ. The authors of the Dead Sea Scrolls, however, did believe that they were part of the new covenant. The commentary continues denouncing the opponents of the Dead Sea group. It draws a connection to the Chaldeans to begin denouncing the next opponent, the Romans. While this section calls them Westerners and specifically names them Kittim, the realization that they are indeed the Romans is confirmed in later parts of the commentary. This section points out that they have no faith in the laws of God and lays the framework for the Romans being the enemies of the people of God, a belief widely held in Second Temple Judaism. As a result, the commentary has some unflattering things to say about the Romans, nearly dehumanizing them as a group, in fact. Notable is that the passage says their law comes from them alone. This is a rather good objection, as the law of God came from God, whereas the Roman laws were man-made and, at various times, ungodly. In total, that is probably the most true accusation in this section of commentary. It is likely the crimes against the Romans, such as insubordination, are the reasons why the strongholds, rebels, and anti-Roman forces were destroyed. In the next section of the commentary, there is reference to historical events of the Second Temple period. The sons of a former ruler of the land of Israel by the name of Alexandra, as Josephus names her, had a dispute over who should rule the kingdom. This dispute engaged Rome in the area, as both brothers appealed to Roman forces as the arbiters of the dispute. This essentially led to Roman conquest of the area. The Second Temple history may be applicable to this section of commentary, but there are no textual details that rule out alternatives. In the next section, we are presented with another belief of the authors, which is consistent with the 149th Psalm, that God's people will pass judgment on the nations and prevail over them, despite the relative weakness and small number of God's people. corresponding to the Kittim in this case. In the next section, we get more ambiguities and code names. The family of Absalom, the teacher of righteousness, and the man of the lie all have in common that no one knows who they are. There are speculations, but nothing conclusive. Again, this commentary uses Pesher interpretation to drag in these figures that Habakkuk would know nothing about. The next part of the commentary goes back to denouncing the abominations of the Kittim. Interestingly, the commentary cites the 13th chapter of the book of Isaiah, breaking with the short quotation of Habakkuk, then the explanation of the verses of Habakkuk quoted. So it's breaking with the established structure that it's been using. The next section of the commentary asserts that the understanding of the prophets was given to the teacher of righteousness. As a side note, this sounds a lot like the gift of knowledge Paul talks about in his letter to the Corinthians. However, this is a personal opinion. This could be very, very, very wrong. It's just, it sounds alike, is all. Next, it says that the end times will be longer than many think. This is of itself prophetic. Finally, the commentary shifts back to judgment and a comparison of the righteous against the wicked. Furthermore, we see the text hijacked again to ascribe a general reference of the righteous man to the group's very own teacher of righteousness. The next section of the text starts to denounce an apparently historical figure, again with a code name, the wicked priest. The next section continues this idea, ending with a description of the judgment of the wicked priest. The location of this judgment may be the valley of Jehoshaphat, or it may be another place. The biblical text seems to indicate the judgment will be in the valley of Jehoshaphat, near Jerusalem. But the Dead Sea community may have had other ideas, as they are not infallible. The next section states that the followers of the wicked priest who, quote, blasphemed and reviled God's chosen ones, with what we have left of it, seems that after a fiery judgment, some group referred to as them will have knowledge revealed to them of the truth. The identity of them does not seem absolute from the text, although it may reference those who believe the wicked priest. Continuing on in the commentary, it is worth looking at the quotation of Habakkuk, as it has been modified to suit the Pesher style interpretation. Just to get a look at their holy days is not in the text of Habakkuk, nor would it fit in the context of the passage. The commentary on this edited passage continues the thoughts of the author about the wicked priest, complaining about how the wicked priest attacked the Dead Sea community on the Day of Atonement. More about the Day of Atonement can be found in Leviticus 23. The next section of commentary continues this condemnation of the wicked priest, saying that he walked in the ways of drunkenness, although this phrase may be non-literal. Continuing on, the community notes that the wicked priest oppressed the Yahad, who are the Dead Sea community. It's a little code name. They love those. And stole the assets of many poor Judeans. Among the most scalding of the accusations brought against him is the defiling of the temple of God. The final section returns to the topic of Gentile idolatry, claiming that idolaters, who are those who make and worship idols, will be exterminated from the earth, something not supported by Jesus Christ, who will first offer them repentance before annihilation. He will offer them repentance before annihilating the bulk of humanity. To clarify, Jesus Christ, being a merciful God, will allow everyone to have one legitimate chance at salvation. Not that there will be 2, 3, no, one. One solid chance. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, consider subscribing. I have more Dead Sea Scroll content on a playlist on my channel.